You're listening to Breaking the Bottle Legacy with Molly Watts, episode 23. Hi, I'm Molly. After a lifetime living under the influence of family alcohol abuse, spending more than 30 years worrying about alcohol and my own drinking, believing I had an unbreakable daily drinking habit, I changed my relationship with alcohol forever. If you want to change your drinking habits, then Breaking the Bottle Legacy is for you. My goal is to help you create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, past, present, and future. Each week, I'll focus on real science and using your own brain to change your relationship with alcohol. Nothing has gone wrong. You're not broken. You're not sick. It's not your genes. And creating peace is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome, or welcome back to Breaking the Bottle Legacy with me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, well, it's been a pretty spectacular day here in Oregon. I'm recording later than usual, late in the afternoon, had a full day of work and rushed home, and really excited to share this interview today with you. It is with Nick Allen and Ian Anderson, and Nick and Ian are the co-founders of Cutback Coach. So Cutback Coach is a wellness app, and they are creating basically a service for people that helps them focus on mindful drinking rather than an all or nothing approach. And it's a behavioral psychology-backed system, and it provides everybody with their own personalized plan that is catered to their lifestyles, habits, and individual goals. I've been using Cutback Coach. It is a text-based system, which I really love and appreciate. And so I was super excited to get to talk to Nick and Ian. Nick comes from a background where both of his parents were in recovery from addiction. So it very much shaped the way that his own view and his relationship with drinking began from an early age. Ian actually has had a family that's been severely impacted by alcohol for generations. In fact, he lost his own mother to alcoholism at the age of 11. So both of these guys share a background with having a family with alcoholism in it, which of course resonated with me. And the idea that they've come up with this really intuitive and useful and motivated system that doesn't require you to quit drinking altogether, but makes those decisions mindful is exactly what is so important to me. So I just loved getting to talk to them. I can't wait to share Cutback Coach with you. And so here is my conversation with Nick Allen and Ian Anderson. Hey, Nick. Hey, Ian. Thank you so much for being with me today and taking the time to talk to Breaking the Bottle Legacy. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Awesome. So in the introduction, I kind of gave just a brief overview of who you guys are and Cutback Coach, but I want to dig deeper and I want to talk a little bit about the backstory as to why. I mean, there's apps. There's a lot of apps, right? So tell me why you guys decided to start Cutback Coach, and what about the backstory and the history behind that for both of you that made this project worthwhile?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start. This is Nick Allen. I'm the founder and CEO of Cutback Coach alongside Ian Anderson. So alcohol has, and my family have kind of a long history, and this is something that goes back for me, to my parents ultimately. I actually grew up in a household where both of my parents were in recovery from alcoholism for most of my life. Okay. And actually have been in AA for more than 30 years and decided, pretty early on in my life that alcohol didn't have a place in their lives, and made a choice that really profoundly affected my family in choosing to give up alcohol completely. Mm-hmm. And what that meant for me was, when I grew up and was kind of starting to explore my own relationship with alcohol, rather than kind of inflict on me or try to kind of push me towards the same path that my parents took, instead, they really helped me to understand my own risk factors when it came to alcohol, and a lot about their story around kind of drinking and the relationship that they had with drinking when I was a child and when my sister was growing up. And for me, that really instilled in me early on this idea of keeping alcohol front of mind as I explored my own relationship, and making sure that it was something that I was being proactive in managing and keeping tabs on, so that it didn't become a problem in my life. And so I like to think that my journey to founding Cutback Coach was really forged in this, 10-year plus now experience of kind of exploring my own relationship with alcohol, realizing that I do enjoy it and I didn't have a desire to cut it out of my life entirely. And sobriety has never really felt like the right path for me. But that there was an opportunity for me to kind of be mindful and intentional about the role that it played in my life. And so for me, despite not wanting to, take this path of kind of all or nothing, I have recognized my own kind of tendencies around drinking, and I have had times certainly where I've overdone it. And it felt like to me something that was a real opportunity area to manage in the same way that I've learned to kind of manage things like my diet and my exercise routine and my mindfulness routine, to be proactive in kind of keeping tabs on and developing systems around my drinking so that it stays on my terms and it stays kind of in a comfortable place in my life. So it's been a long journey to getting here, to building a service that I believe can help millions of folks who, enjoy drinking and maybe don't want to quit entirely, yet who nonetheless, have an opportunity to change the role that alcohol plays in their lives in order to improve their overall health and wellness. And that's really what Cutback Coach is setting out to do.
That's awesome.
And my co-founder Ian has a kind of related story around kind of his family's history with alcohol, and so we found each other kind of in this shared story. And I'll let him share his story as well.
Awesome, Ian. Let's hear it.
Yeah, hi. It's great to be here. My name's Ian Anderson. I'm a co-founder of Cutback Coach as well. So there's not really two ways about it. I had a pretty intense and traumatic experience with sort of alcohol in my family when I was a child. I think it's kind of worth noting, I grew up with identical twin brothers. So people out there that kind of like understand how much that can lead to like sort of a protective barrier that we had that kind of helped us through this. But essentially, probably around the time that I was 5 or 6 or 7, my father started drinking more heavily. And it went from, the way he describes it, 6 beers a night to 7 to 8 to 12 over time. And he was in construction, so he would just go grind all day and come home and make this his pattern that he got into and couldn't really pull himself out of very easily. And it was at that time that I believe my parents' relationship started to just kind of fall apart a little bit. My mom would picked up the habit of drinking, which she never really had prior to being married and having kids. And she was someone that would drink in private, so she would kind of lock herself in her room and hide while she drank. So this was the pattern that my brother and I have a couple other siblings, but they moved out with their step parents. So this was going on for several years. And at some point, sort of the silver lining of this whole thing is my dad had a wake up moment, and he said, if I don't do something and fix this situation for my kids, they're going to end up in some sort of childcare. It was getting that intense. So he quit cold turkey after trying AA a couple times and like talking to friends and finding that it wasn't working for him. And so, he quit cold turkey, moved out of the house, and we went into a situation where we would visit him on the weekends. And I think this is kind of important just to mention as I lead up to sort of the pinnacle of the story. I was then living with my mom full time, but that didn't happen very long because she got to a point where she couldn't even take care of my brother and I. She just couldn't stop drinking. She couldn't really pull herself out of it. And we had some very sort of traumatic experiences during that 1 or 2 year period where we were trying to live with her full time and my dad was visiting, and he sort of had to like let us go see her, even though he knew it wasn't a safe situation. There were a couple incidents that led to sort of the final straw, and eventually we switched places and started living with my dad full time. And this was great because he was sober and clean now, and he was at a point where he could raise us. And it was a very formative period of my childhood after that point. Whereas the previous period was sort of almost blocked out, if you will. Like I don't even really remember much of it. Unfortunately, that's one of the last times that I really saw my mom. And 2 years later, she passed away because she wasn't able to sort of get out of the habit of alcohol. And she died due to liver and organ failure due to alcoholism.
Wow.
So it's a pretty dark story, but it's really important here because it's been front and center my entire life. I've always talked about it with my twin brother. We've always tried to make it something that we generationally change. And we kind of take it upon ourselves as a responsibility. This wasn't something that just affected my mom and dad. It was my uncles and aunts and their grandparents. My grandfather and grandmother both died based on complications due to alcoholism, pretty much on both sides of the family. Well, that's not entirely true, but on my father's side. So it's been something that's just been all over the place in my family.
Yeah.
My aunt, I just got to give her a shout out. She was on a pretty destructive path as well, and she pulled herself out, and now she's just like this beacon of light in my family, and like so inspirational to us. So it's not just my brother and I and my siblings, but there are some other folks in my generation that are really trying to make a shift here. So interestingly, when Nick came to me with the idea of Cutback Coach, to bring it full circle, I never thought I'd have the opportunity to help build a company to help millions of people with an issue that has so deeply affected my life. So it was an obvious, like, yes, I'm totally into this. I really want to do this. I'm really excited. And I get to work with Nick, who I've known for years, and we get along really well. And that's sort of the backstory. And we use that. Honestly, we use that motivation every day to just keep trying to do better.
Yeah. I love the fact that you guys come from two very divergent stories and backgrounds in terms of how alcohol was a part of your lives, but gives you both perspective in a different way to address a problem that is, as you mentioned, really can affect millions and millions, and does affect millions and millions of people. So it's so great that you joined forces and decided to, create a program. And I don't want to say, because I really think that you guys have a bigger purpose than just creating an app, right? I mean, it's not all about just another tool. But tell me, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of Cutback Coach, because it's an important part of it. And I'm involved with moderation management, and you guys are partners with moderation. And I was just talking to somebody today about recommending Cutback Coach as a tool. It is fundamentally something that helps people both plan out a goal for the week and then track how they do against that goal. Correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, given that Ian and I have both had experiences in our family where we've, and we both have the utmost respect for folks who decide that alcohol has no place in their life. Both Ian and my families were affected in a way that was really positive by the choice of our parent, or of Ian's father and my parents to be completely sober. What we realized is that there are many, many others for whom sobriety is just not the right fit, or at least not the right fit right now, and yet who nonetheless have an opportunity to be more mindful and intentional about the role that alcohol plays in their life. And so Cutback Coach is really designed with the idea that there's a middle ground between, this all or nothing approach to sobriety, or kind of like nothing at all and getting no help. And so the opportunity that we've kind of identified here to help folks in a different way than a lot of the traditional services that you see in the alcohol health space today is in kind of meeting you where you are and developing a personal plan to kind of help you achieve your specific goals. And for some people, that's, cutting back a lot. For some people, that's simply kind of keeping tabs on and monitoring the role, when and how much they're drinking. But the entire Cutback Coach system really revolves around this idea that each week we give you a recommended daily plan. And we look at your past history of, the last few weeks that you've been drinking, kind of what your patterns look like. We look at the goals that you share with us when you sign up, and we generate these recommendations, to help kind of pace with you in order to reach your specific goals, whether that's, decreasing the frequency with which you drink, fewer days of the week, decreasing the intensity of those drinking days. So, maybe cutting out those last few at the end of the night that ultimately end up making you feel, not so great the next morning. And so we take those targets, we give you this recommendation. And then the key is that each Sunday, our members actually have the opportunity to switch things around and kind of update their plans for the week ahead. This uses a behavioral psychology tactic known as pre-commitments, and the power of kind of time boxing. So our members actually create a accountability roadmap for the week ahead. So they tell us, on Monday through Wednesday, I'm going to try to stay dry. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe I'll allow myself to have, a couple glasses of wine. And then Sunday, I'm going to go back to having a dry day. And so with that, rather than Cutback Coach each day needing to kind of dictate to you like, hey, today you should do this, or, us telling you what to do, rather what we do is actually remind you via text message on a daily basis the intention that you had for yourself at the beginning of the week. So we can come to you on a daily basis with our text-based reminders and say, hey, you identified today as a day that you wanted to try to be dry. And so let's kind of work on kind of keeping that intention. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is that you have this roadmap that you set up front. We give you these daily reminders to help you keep accountable to that plan that you've made for yourself. And then I think one of the things that's kind of fun about the Cutback Coach system is that you actually track your drinks in real time via text message. So instead of actually having to go and remember to find the app on the third page of your home screen and go in and kind of enter your numbers as you're drinking, we have this really low friction path to tracking and engaging with us, which is as simple as texting a friend. So you can send us a little wine glass emoji to text a glass of wine, or the word wine if that's easier for you. And our system will respond and kind of give you an update about where you are relative to your plan for the day and for the week overall. One last piece of kind of the nuts and bolts of the experience is that in addition to kind of this planning and tracking process, we actually do have a team of real coaches that are sitting behind the text messages. And I think this is part of the magic of the experience that a lot of folks are really delighted by. When you need a little bit of extra help, when you're feeling maybe, the craving and you're not really sure what to do, and you said you're going to have a dry day and you're feeling like a little wobbly, you can text us and just ask for a nudge or ask for a little bit of encouragement to push you in the right direction. And we've got a trained team of real people who will kind of jump into the conversation thread, again, all via text, and help kind of, coach you towards the directions of staying accountable to your goals. And so in a nutshell, kind of the system is non-judgmental. We're really about kind of meeting you where you are and not making you feel bad about breaking your targets, but helping you build the tools and the kind of habits to get drinking into a place that you feel more comfortable with and happier with relative to your overall kind of health and wellness picture. And that's really what Cutback Coach is all about.
Yeah, which is why I love it. And I am a member, or that's what we're called, members, I guess. So when I changed my relationship with alcohol, and I've talked about this on the podcast, one of the most important things for me was, in the beginning piece, was meeting myself where I was at. And at first that was really hard to do because I was writing down a number that was higher than I logistically thought that it should be. Like in my mind, I was like, no, that's too much. I don't want to say that. But the problem is when you are trying to change a habit that's been ingrained, and I had a 30-year daily drinking habit that I was trying to work on. And if you tell yourself and you try to restrict from the beginning, what I've seen and what I experienced myself was then I had this initial just want to rebel against it. And instead, using my planning brain and actually meeting myself where I was at, making a plan ahead of time, and then not breaking that promise to myself, set up a pattern where I realized that I could make a plan, keep that plan. And then over time, I reduced that plan. Then over time, I added in alcohol-free days. Then over time, that is what I really appreciate about Cutback Coaches, because having that plan was really an integral part of me changing my relationship with alcohol forever. And it had to, but people often tell me they don't want a plan because, one, they feel bad about how much they're writing down, or two, they're afraid they're going to fail.
Yeah. And I mean, it's such an interesting thing about our societal relationship with alcohol, and that like proactively managing the role that alcohol plays in your life is something to be proud of. And even if you may be starting from a place that is, a little higher than you feel comfortable with, the fact is just being in a place where you're trying to make an effort to change your habits is something that, when you think about, folks who are starting to kind of change their eating routines to lose a little weight, or starting to kind of build new exercise routines, these are things that we're proud of, and we're okay with starting from a place where we're not professionals and we're not hitting our goals every single day or going to the gym 5 days a week. And yet with drinking, there's all this guilt and shame built into our societal relationship with alcohol, that like either you have a drinking problem and you need to quit entirely and that's the only path for you, or as kind of this false narrative goes, you're totally fine and everything's healthy and kind of, no system needed. And the fact is, it's not something to be ashamed of to want to have a system and to start working towards making a change. And we have to start somewhere. And so I had the exact same experience. I started really slow in my own experience with Cutback Coach as I was developing the system, just kind of logging and making sure that I had an understanding of where I was with my habits. And then it became easier and easier to build new routines around, when those days were going to be that I just knew, every Monday through Thursday, like those are just days that I don't drink. And it becomes a lot easier to do that once you've kind of got this routine built in and a system to help you kind of, adapt, reflect, and optimize that routine to best fit your lifestyle over time.
Yeah. And one of the things I know that I mentioned with Ian when we first chatted about you guys and getting you guys on the podcast was I told him I love the fact that it's text-based. Like I love the fact that it's text-based because I don't like the apps on my phone. Seriously, I've got pages. It just drives me crazy. So the fact that it's text-based just works for me. I mean, and it's so much easier. It's so fine to just shoot a number, shoot a whatever back to a text. And I appreciate the reminders.
Yeah, I really believe that the text message is a really key part of what makes us different and what helps us to stand out and kind of helping folks really achieve really meaningful results. When we look at a lot of the other kind of habit apps, not just in alcohol, but across kind of diet, fitness, mindfulness, I think where a lot of these apps fail is that folks just fail to actually build the habit around using the app in the first place before they ever start making progress towards the target habit that they're seeking to change. And so by meeting our customers in their text message inbox, we're kind of latching onto a habit that everyone already has, which is checking your text messages a bunch of times a day. And that makes getting started with us incredibly easy. And you're starting to work on your drinking on day one, rather than needing to work on figuring out how to use an app or building that daily app habit before you ever start making progress towards, the goals that you're trying to achieve. So I really do think that's a part of the magic that a lot of Cutback Coach members report, really, really loving as well.
Yeah. You started right before the pandemic, right?
Yeah. So we launched the product. We launched the product slightly after, but started working on it in about January. So 3 months into our development process, the world changed forever.
Yeah. Interesting timing, no doubt about it. But it's actually, I'm wondering, because in this realm of alcohol, we have seen how COVID has impacted people's drinking habits. And unfortunately, it not in a positive way. Many people report that they have been drinking more than they ever used to. And alcohol sales during the first quarter, I think, of 2020 or second quarter 2020 were, record. So talk to me about how that has how that has played into the growth of the company and kind of, what you see as far as has that been something that people have said, I found this because of, a relationship that I had with alcohol during COVID?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So our customers, talk about the stresses of the pandemic on a daily basis. I mean, we hear it all the time of folks who are, joining because of the stresses of, raising young kids at home and also having to have a job and also having to kind of, manage all of these different kind of realities in a context that's changed so dramatically. So anecdotally, we get it from our customers a lot. And the fact is, I mean, when you look at the data over the last year, there's a study from JAMA that basically identified that 3 out of 4 US adults were drinking more frequently in 2020 than they did in 2019. And so, without a doubt, our societal relationship with alcohol has changed pretty dramatically over the last year. And yet we still feel kind of isolated in this idea that am I drinking too much, right? It's something that's really hard to talk about. And yet the majority of people, from the study are saying that they are in fact drinking more in this last year. So I think the first message here is that, if you're feeling like you're drinking a little bit more this year than you have in the past, you aren't alone. And that's not something that, should isolate you, but rather is kind of a collective stress that we've all felt over the last year, and alcohol being a collective coping mechanism. But I think the moment of time for Cutback Coach kind of is really interesting because, I think we're reaching this crescendo in terms of our societal kind of perspectives on drinking. It's, there's a lot more kind of stories that are coming out now. The New York Times has been writing a lot about, this relationship between alcohol and our society. And I think we're at a point where we're right on the precipice of this conversation breaking into the kind of the popular wellness dialogue, basically, where, just like we, 5 or 10 years ago, we didn't really talk about mindfulness and meditation as part of our wellness routines.
Right.
I think we're getting to the place where alcohol will be, and proactively managing the role that alcohol plays in our life will be an integral part of our proactive wellness toolkits. And that's really kind of what Cutback Coach wants to help achieve, is to change this conversation from one of, negativity and shame and kind of addiction and, these kind of words around alcohol being a problem into an opportunity where, anyone who drinks should be thinking about the role that alcohol plays in their wellness. And that should be something that's a default on state, not something that you only do when it becomes a problem in your life. And so I think the pandemic is accelerating that a lot because many, many more people are experiencing, alcohol, as a part of their lives that's maybe a little bit bigger than they want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's also something interesting here where there's like nuggets to point out about the opposite side of the conversation too. I have had conversations probably more with like friends and such who have like harnessed the energy of the pandemic to try to better themselves a little bit more. So I think we're seeing some of that happen during the pandemic. Also, just something that's been on my mind is I do think that there might be like a second wave, so to speak, once we have sort of a reopening after the pandemic, people kind of getting overly excited to come back in and maybe go a little overboard then too. So we talk a lot about like mindful drinking. And so what would that mean to you as you go back in, and how can you set yourself up for success to have as much fun and have the drinks that you want to, but do it in a way that's as responsible as possible? It's a lot like the dry January thing, where if you don't quite do dry January right, you might actually enter February drinking a little more than you intended to. So we want, as people kind of re-enter after the pandemic, we want them thinking about building really great habits around mindfulness. And then one other thing I just noted here, there's been another boom during the pandemic, which has been for non-alcoholic non-alcohol brands. And this has just been fascinating to watch. I think it was some of the brands like Athletic Brewing, it might've been, grew like 500% in 1 month. I'm probably getting that quote wrong, but they've certainly grown that much in the past year. And it's just really exciting and sort of motivating to see the culture around non-alcoholic brands and moderation, and even, some of the celebrity conversations bringing this all mainstream. So it's just, honestly, it's really nice to be part of that conversation right now. It's like, it feels really positive for us.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, because it actually, one of the things that has been for me, and one of the reasons that I talk about my peaceful relationship with alcohol, and it very much is a mindful and intentional relationship with alcohol. Mm-hmm. I also, and I think I may have said this before to Ian, I consider myself an alcohol minimalist. And I say that with all intention, because I think that the idea for people of moderation and cutting back sometimes still implies this idea that, alcohol is a known toxin. It's a chemical agent. It's a drug, and we have to be careful with it. There's just no two ways about it. But at the same time, we can enjoy the therapeutic benefits of it in a limited way. And the conversation does need to focus on that mindful intention and how we're going to incorporate it without the negative side effects. The problem is with alcohol that the negative side effects start really quickly for people. And, the more drinks that you have, it's a very precipitous decline, how quickly the positive effects outweigh, the negative effects outweigh the positive effects. And so I really think that the whole idea of being able to stay ahead of that, and especially when we're coming out of the pandemic, keeping a mindfulness approach to it is going to be critical for people.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I mean, for us, cutting back is really about getting more. It's not about this idea that, it's, some restrictive thing that needs to kind of feel really, really hard or really like it's kind of cramping your style. But there are clearly, drinks that can be cut from most people's routines, frankly, that will help you feel better the next day and minimize those kind of downside effects, while really helping you maximize the enjoyment of the ones that you do have. And I think that's what for us, it's helping you get more out of life, out of drinking and out of the other areas of your life, by just being a little bit more thoughtful about the ones that you do have and the ones that you choose that, maybe you don't actually need.
Yeah, exactly. And that's maximum enjoyment, minimal detriment.
Absolutely.
So I know that I kind of mentioned this to you guys ahead of time, and I just want to get your thoughts on it, because while one of the things that I really focus on when I'm talking with people and as a part of my journey has been creating a better mindset, a thought process, understanding the science of alcohol, and really wrapping my brain around how I want to think about alcohol. So while I think Cutback Coach is a wonderful tool for a part of changing my relationship, one of the things that has been really pivotal for me, like I said, is changing how I think about alcohol in the first place. So reframing it so that I'm not looking for it to relieve anxiety, understanding that actually drinking more than just a drink after work can actually have a rebound effect and raise anxiety because of the chemical impacts in the brain. Where do you guys see your role with Cutback Coach going forward? What growth areas do you think are there for you in terms of helping people navigate this relationship with alcohol in more than just a habit tracking way?
Yeah, so I think it's a really good question. And we ask this question of ourselves a lot. I think where we see the opportunity for Cutback Coach, on the one hand, is helping to normalize the idea of managing alcohol proactively 100%. for more people, right? Yep. So I think that there's an audience that has kind of connected the dots already between the role that alcohol plays in other areas of their health and wellness, whether it's kind of mental health, anxiety and stress levels, whether it's kind of physical, diet, exercise, kind of those types of goals, sleep quality. It turns out that alcohol can have really profound impacts on all of those areas, and yet I think for many people, it's not an area that they would consider proactively managing because there's all the stigma that kind of comes with it. And so I think our the big opportunity area that we see is kind of opening this category to more people and helping them to understand the role that alcohol plays in their health and wellness. And I think so that's kind of a little bit of what I would consider category expansion, if you will, in terms of broadening this definition of people who are managing their alcohol proactively away from any kind of semblance of the problem drinking persona, which I think is a really problematic word in general, and we really try and stay away from that. So I think that's one area. In terms of kind of how we help folks understand and change the role that alcohol plays in their life and change their thinking around drinking, I think that the coaching component of our business becomes really interesting there. So yes, we've got a tracker. Yes, we're going to show you things like insights and stats around how your drinking has changed over time and what that means for your health and wellness. But the other piece that I think makes us really different is that we actually have humans behind the system there to help kind of coach you through these difficult moments. There to help you kind of reframe, that stress drink at the end of a hard day and maybe try and kind of avoid that one so that you can, more enjoy the celebratory, positive role that alcohol can play in your life. And so we do this a lot. We work with folks, on a daily basis who are, realizing that they don't really want to drink, but that their habits really drive them towards drinking. A really common one being you finish work and the way that you transition from work into home is you pour that glass of wine. Or we get a lot of folks saying I drink when I cook dinner and that's just what I do. And so for us, as folks are kind of working with us and starting to reflect a little bit more on where are the areas in their habits that they have associations with alcohol, we help folks to kind of recognize those triggers and replace the routine so that they can still get those enjoyment moments, those relaxation moments, and find ways to de-stress that don't necessarily need to revolve around alcohol from a psychological standpoint.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Well, that's the bottom line is bringing more of this to the conversation. And I really appreciate the whole attitude that making it something that is just normal, right? I talked to Dr. David Nutt, UK scientist, very well known, and wrote this book called Drink, the New Science of Alcohol in Your Health. And he basically says that, just like your blood pressure, just like your cholesterol, you should know how many drinks, right? And it's just kind of that simple. There's no judgment applied to it. There's no negativity, but you pay attention to it. You're just mindful about it. And I want people to hear this, that listen to this show, that's possible for all of us. It is. It's absolutely possible. And it doesn't have to be painful. And it doesn't have to be stressful, and it doesn't have to be a real, negative, unenjoyable thing. It's actually really cool, and it's actually fun, and it's actually just like everything else that you're talking about. It opens up your life. I don't find counting or managing or thinking about it restrictive. I find it empowering.
I totally agree. And I've had the very similar experience in kind of my own kind of experience with the product and with this tracking is once you get to a place where you have it locked in and you've got your patterns and you start to see and feel those changes, I mean, it makes a world of difference. And I just feel totally comfortable with my relationship with drinking now, with the result of being able to kind of, have this structured system to help along the way. So that's really what we're hoping to help as many people as possible to achieve.
Perfect. You guys, I love this. I am super excited to share this with my community. I'm going to put links to Cutback Coach in my show notes so you guys can find this, and just really encourage everybody to check it out. It's a wonderful, easy to use tool for helping you change your relationship with alcohol and just to get more mindful about it, which cannot be a bad thing for anybody that's listening to this show. They hear me say it all the time. And that's really what I want you to do, is be thinking ahead of time, making a plan ahead of time, setting yourself up for success. And with Cutback Coach, it's going to be all the easier, just having the support and having a coach behind you, somebody that's going to even give you some positive encouragement along the way.
Yeah, we really look forward to working with all of you, and you can do this. It's something that we can all improve in our lives, and it's something you absolutely can do. So we look forward to working with you.
Awesome. Nick, Ian, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I can't wait to see where Cutback Coach goes in the future.
Thanks so much, Molly.
All right.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you for listening to Breaking the Bottle Legacy. This podcast is dedicated to helping you change your drinking habits and to create a peaceful relationship with alcohol. Take something that you learned in today's episode and apply it to your life this week. Transformation is possible. You have the power to change your relationship with alcohol now. For more information, please visit me at www.mollywatts.com.